PlayStation Store is running its games under $15 sale, and we'll be looking at games under the price of $10. Some pretty good stuff. Now, this is particularly just from the games under $15 sale. There's also that double discount sale. Honestly, the deals on that sale aren't that great. So, there weren't even that many games under the price of $10 in that sale. So, without talking any longer, let's just get into the deals in this video. And I want to start things off with Metal Gear Solid 5, the Definitive Experience, which is 70% off for $5.99. We'll see this at this price every now and again, but it's hard not to recommend it at just $6. I loved MGS5. Take away all the controversy that was surrounding the game in 2015. If you assess the game for what it is, it's a very good open-world action stealth game that runs just incredibly well. I mean, they got MGS5 working on the PlayStation 3, and that's not the ideal way to play the game, but on the PS4, works really, really well. Frame rate is super smooth. And overall, just a very enjoyable game, and if you want to do all of the extra content and things like that, that's gonna add quite a bit of game time to your overall play hours, but for $6, I thought this was an excellent deal to mention. Next up, we have The Last Guardian, which is 50% off for $9.99. Man, oh man, the story with this game goes back a long time. Sony E3 2009 press conference, the trailer getting leaked prior to that press conference, then the game getting revealed. Coming from the guys that brought you Ico and Shadow of the Colossus, there was a ton of buzz surrounding the game, and then it went MIA forever, and then it ultimately came out in like 2016. And while it wasn't at the level of SOTC or Ico, I would still say it was a pretty good game. Now, there were just some wonky issues like camera and some of the mechanics just were not there, but overall, visually and from a narrative standpoint, I still thought it was a very strong game. Again, falls short of Ico and Shadow of the Colossus, but those are, you know, highly, highly regarded games that if you're falling short of those two, it's not the end of the world. But Last Guardian, for $9.99, I think is still a pretty solid pickup. Next up, we have Tales of Vesperia Definitive Edition, which is 80% off down to $9.99. So this is a JRPG, especially one in the Tales of franchise, that I always recommend. Now, in some ways, it's not as strong as some of the more recent Tales of games. Like, Berseria is the one that most people consider the best, and that's on sale as well. If you want to pick that up for $9.99, that's a great buy as well. Vesperia is the one that I gravitate towards a little bit more, so maybe it's a little bit of nostalgia since this was one of the JRPGs that I played when I was younger, and I really enjoyed it, but I thought the cast of characters was tremendous. I thought it had one of the strongest main characters in a JRPG that really foregoed the typical, like, zero-to-hero type JRPG main character role where the main character, Yuri, is just a nonchalant, very likable character. Then you have a solid roster of characters rounding out the entire party. Gameplay is your typical Tales of Fare. The story isn't anything, you know, crazy, but it's a pretty good save-the-world JRPG kind of story, and 80% off for $9.99 I think is a solid pickup. So go ahead and check that out if you're looking for a good JRPG. Next up, many of you guys might have played Housemarque's Returnal earlier this year. Well, they've done a couple of other games. One that I do want to give a mention to is Matterfall for $9.99. Now, Matterfall, from a critical review reception, is actually one of their lesser review titles. I believe it's got around a 70 on Metacritic, but I really enjoyed the game. While it's relatively simplistic in terms of gameplay, I still thought it offered a challenging experience while also remaining relatively simplistic that anyone can jump in, and it still has a lot of the trademark Housemarque fundamentals. Great particle effects, visuals are pretty solid. It was originally, like, when Matterfall was first announced, a lot of people thought this was going to be Housemarque's first AAA big budget title. Really didn't turn out to be that. Turned out to be like maybe a game with a slightly higher budget, but also still keeping that original Housemarque flair intact. $10 for Matterfall, I think is pretty good though, so check that out. Alright, next up, we got Far Cry Primal, $5.99, Far Cry 4 is $5.99, Far Cry 3 is $3, just gonna roll them all into one recommendation. Far Cry 4 was solid. Far Cry Primal, I like the setting change, and even with the setting change being such a stark difference to the other Far Cry games and what we typically expect, Primal still had that essence of Far Cry absolutely intact, and you could tell it's a Far Cry game. So from that standpoint, I actually really enjoyed Primal. It's one of those games that a lot of people have forgotten about at this stage of the game, but for $6, I think it's a pretty good pickup. Far Cry 4 is one that, I mean, if you played any of the other Far Cry games, you know what you're getting yourself into here. Open world, you can do a lot of stuff, a lot of content, and $6 for that from a content standpoint, I think is pretty good. So Far Cry 4, if you're looking for your traditional Far Cry experience, or you're looking for that first-time Far Cry experience, that's probably the one you want to go for. If you've played some of the other Far Cry games and you haven't played Primal, definitely worth a shout there, especially at that $6 price point. Next up, we have Dothack G, Last Recode, 84% off for $7.99. A great collection of 3 JRPGs with an addition of a smaller episode. I really enjoyed Dothack G, another one much like Tales of Vesperia that I'm very nostalgic with, so, you know, that does give me a little bit of a bias towards it, but I really enjoyed the games, and, you know, I picked them up when they came out on the PlayStation 2, $40 a pop. They really got my money with this one. They got a lot of our money if you picked up these games on the PS2, which was kind of whack. But with this version, you got all the games for just $8, and you got an additional 4th episode that is a little bit smaller. Great cast of characters here. Originally PlayStation 2 title, so keep your expectations in line. Definitely some stiff animation, some wonky voice acting, a lot of reused areas, and that's kind of annoying, like backtracking a lot, but I thought the narrative was really strong. Again, the cast of characters is really good, and the combat system I thought was quite good as well, and the shoot 'em up sections were pretty enjoyable. A lot of different gameplay elements to it as well, and with all 3 games, that's going to keep you busy for quite a while. I mean, you can blitz through the first game relatively quick, but the second and third games do make the experiences longer and longer, so $8 for all that content I think is pretty good. Next up, Vampyr, 75% off for $9.99. This was a PlayStation Plus game a while back, so do keep that in mind, and some of you guys might already own it. And it is available on PlayStation now, but Vampyr was a great game, published by Focus Home Interactive and done by Don't Nod Entertainment, the guys that brought you Life is Strange. So with that being known, you can go into Vampyr expecting more of a story-driven experience. The gameplay here and the combat and things like that was really the downside of Vampyr. Thankfully, they did add another difficulty option to the game, so if you just want to go through the story mode, I think that is the best way to play the game. I played it with the original difficulty, and I still had a really good time with it. I thought the voice acting in this game was absolutely excellent. A lot of people not big fans of the ending, but I think overall for $9.99, Vampyr is one of those unsung games that is worth a pickup. Maybe that initial $50, $60 price point wasn't worth it, but at $10, I think it's a solid get. Next up, Scribblenauts Mega Pack, $7.99. Scribblenauts is just a super charming game that is always worth a pickup, especially at a discounted price. In this collection, you get Scribblenauts Unlimited as well as Scribblenauts Unmasked DC Comics Adventure. If you're looking for a game that you don't have to take too seriously, or you want to play with a younger sibling, younger cousin, whatever the case may be, this is always a pretty good one that's accessible for all ages, and I think $7.99 is a great get for this one. Even at like $14, $15, it would be pretty good, but at $8, a really good pickup for 2 titles. Next up, Okami HD, which is 50% off for $9.99. I mean, I'm gonna keep recommending this till I'm blue in the face and Capcom gives me my Okami too, but no, seriously, Okami was one of my favorite PlayStation 2 games, and a game that has aged just wonderfully well because of its art style, and its art style is just so gorgeous. Music is really good, and if you never played Okami, it came out back in like 05 or 06. Large audience of people completely missed out on this game, and hopefully, you know, with people constantly talking about it, that it does build that cult following to parlay into an Okami 2. $9.99 for Okami HD is tremendous. Go check that out. A great pickup. And lastly, another game that unfortunately looks like the series is seeing the axe, at least for now. That's Gravity Rush 2, 50% off for $9.99. I mean, I've talked about Gravity Rush 2 at length. Gravity Rush in general is a fantastic franchise originating on the PlayStation Vita, by the way. That physical copy of Gravity Rush 1 continues to go up in price, but Gravity Rush 2 is a considerably better game than the first one, created ground up for the PlayStation 4, expanding the game, adding more content, but still keeping that charm and flair that the first game had. Visuals are absolutely stunning. This is going to be another game that is going to age very well over the years. Gameplay is great. Awesome main character. Just can't say enough good things about Gravity Rush 2. Just unfortunately, you know, them's the break sometimes. A game can be really good, but just commercially does not perform up to par. That was kind of the case with Gravity Rush 2. Hopefully, over the years, another game that, you know, gets this groundswell of appeal and a lot of people check it out. And maybe one day we can get a Gravity Rush 3. But at this point, if you haven't played Gravity Rush 2, go play that. Go play Gravity Rush Remastered and have a great time with those 2 titles. And that's going to wrap up this one. Again, a bunch of great deals available as a part of the Games Under $15 sale. These all under the price of $10. Go check them out. Links to everything in the description box down below. Sound off with all of your thoughts in the comments section. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.